Irma's lost strength, the threat is not over. Forecasters say conditions are still life-threatening.
Maybe a humanitarian crisis unfolding. 10,000 residents that stayed behind are dealing with the unbelievable damage.
Nearly 6 million homes and businesses in Florida are without power. That's half the state.
I know for our entire state, but especially for the Keys, it's going to be a long road.
President Trump ready to visit the flood-ravaged state of Florida, but first, tax reform.
None of us fully know how the next 6 months are going to work out. There's one absolute total imperative, and that is to pass a tax cut.
16 years after the attacks of September 11th, the traditions to honor the nearly 3,000 victims live on.
America cannot be intimidated, and those who try will soon join the long list of vanquished enemies who dare to test our mettle.
This is a Fox News alert. At least 10 people are dead, and Alabama is under a state of emergency as Tropical Depression Irma moves north.
Something else to worry about. The monster storm bringing whipping winds, historic surge, and even spinning up tornadoes.
All right, right now, 13 million people remain in the dark as evacuees return to their homes, hoping for the best, expecting the worst.
We have team coverage across Florida. Jillian Mealy is live in Orlando. We have Griff Jenkins in Naples, and we're going to begin with you there in Naples, Griff. What's the latest there?
Good morning, guys. It's all about patience here in Southwest Florida as they try to work furiously to clear the roads of the trees like the ones you see behind me and restoring power to the millions of Floridians that have lost it all across the state. But in the Keys, they're doing much worse. It's a humanitarian crisis, really, at this point because of the damage. The aerial footage we're seeing from the Keys is just devastating as residents try to get back into the upper Keys. Monroe County saying that it's 7 a.m. In just an hour, they'll begin letting people in who have proof of business or home ownership to Key Largo, Taverner, and Isla Mirada Keys. But far south, way, way worse of anywhere that was hit. Of course, Irma coming on as a Category 4 in Cudjoe Key. The residents, though, trying to get in, very upset yesterday, like this gentleman. Take a listen.
I have a dog and a cat and a parrot, and I can't get back to my home. There is nothing open. I have no food. I have no water. This is wrong. This is wrong.
And Governor Rick Scott touring it from the air. All hands on deck for him. Here's quickly what he had to say.
My heart goes out to the people in the Keys. I mean, there's devastation. And you know, I just hope everybody, survived. It's horrible what we saw.
All hands on deck, no water, no power, no cell service there in the Keys. That is a story you're going to hear much more about today, guys.
All right, Griff, thank you very much. The U.S. military has sent the U.S. Abraham Lincoln and the Iwo Jima for search and rescue around the Keys because, as Griff mentioned, it's a humanitarian crisis there. A lot of people can't get to their houses. We saw the frustration right there. Only state contractors, the National Guard, and powered crews.
Monroe County, which is in the Keys, they are letting residents and business owners back in at 7 o'clock this morning, but you have to show proof that you live there or that you own a business there.
Yeah. All right. Meanwhile, Jillian Mealy is in Orlando, and Orlando is doing okay this morning, right, Jillian?
Yeah, Orlando is doing okay. You got that right, Brian. A lot of people just trying to get back to normal life, trying to get to their homes to see what they look like here. And a lot more cars on the road, even this morning, than we've seen in days. Airports expected to reopen today at a limited capacity. Keep that in mind. But airports such as Orlando, where we are, Tampa, even Jacksonville, flights are expected to resume. You still may have to be patient for another day as they get up and running fully. But it is a good sign that they are at least expected to reopen. Disney's going to reopen today. A lot of people are excited about that as well. Water parks will be closed. Keep that in mind. As we come back out here live, take a look. We're outside of the DoubleTree here in Orlando. That sustained a lot of damage in Irma. You can see all of the facade there on that right portion of the hotel just ripped off, and that's just one spot of this hotel where that happened. People were inside when this happened, and actually we talked to one person who said she heard it. She said she jumped out of bed, scared, didn't know what was going on, and that was across the area. Miles southwest of where we are right now is a town called Lakeland. That got hit by the eye of the storm, and Lakeland got hit really hard. Did you hear this happened, or you just came back to say?
Come back to come home, and we come back to nothing. And this is like the first major hurricane. I've only been down here since August of last year, so this is the first major hurricane that I've been through.
So we actually ran into that couple as they were getting back to their home for the first time. They hadn't seen it yet. We were there as they took a look, and they were just in shock. They were, as you can imagine, devastated, upset. I said, "Did you live here?" And they said, "Well, we used to." So the question is then, when you have damage like that, where do you go? So that's the problem that a lot of people in Lakeland are dealing with, a small town, but a significant amount of damage, guys.
Julie Amelia live in Orlando. Thank you very much. She's right. Where do you go? If you're a shelter, something like 200,000 different people stayed in shelters during this storm. The problem going forward with 13 million Floridians with no electricity, it's going to be in the 90s all this week. Mm-hmm. They would love to have air conditioning.
Well, and many of the airports are still closed and will be through Wednesday or Thursday. A lot of them sustained a lot of damage. People in that area said it sounded like a war. They said they could hear all the explosions outside, kept them up all night, just riddled with anxiety.
All right, meanwhile, 6 minutes after the top of the hour. Meanwhile, back in Washington, D.C., the president is going to be visiting the U.S. Virgin Islands in a couple of, maybe as early, sometime within the next 2 weeks. But most of his focus tonight will be on tax reform, where he's going to have a dinner. It's going to be paid for. It's going to involve 6 U.S. senators. And here's the interesting part. 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans. Senator Toomey, Senator Thune, and Senator Hatch will be there. And very vulnerable Democrats will be there, who happen to be in states won by Donald Trump. Senator Manchin, Senator Heitkamp, and Senator Joe Donnelly. At stake, maybe some of the details that they'll talk about while eating steak will be the tax reform that's going to be unveiled towards the end of the month.
All 3 of those Democrats that are sitting at the table with him, they're all up for re-election. And like you said, they all come from states where he did win.
Actually, it's brilliant because when you think about it, the tax committees that will be writing the tax reform ideas are going to start their work. So it would be great if the president would say, look, hey, Congress, I've got Democrats and I've got Republicans who are all together with me on this. However, I'm sure the president would also love to have all of the Republicans on board. And there have been a couple of top Republicans who have suggested that Steve Bannon and the president himself need to stop picking on Republicans, incumbent Republicans, because it's not helping them. You know, when they single out Jeff Flake, the president has singled out Bob Corker and Mitch McConnell as well. They say just lay off those guys because otherwise we could be in big trouble going forward.
You're tougher on your family than you are of your acquaintances and maybe your neighbors. And the Democrats in this case are the neighbors, and he expects more from his family. So I think it's kind of interesting to see, because I believe that the White House is going out of its way to get on the same page as the House and Senate when it comes to this tax reform. That's why they've had these series of meetings to speak in one voice. Remember, the president said when it came to repeal and replace, you guys do it. You know, this is what I want, and you get the details done, and I'll sign it. They never got a chance to get it to him to sign it.
Yeah, Newt Gingrich was saying it's very important for them to get this signed, tax reform, at least before Thanksgiving. Whether or not that can happen, we'll see.
But I think this great tactic for the president to have done that deal with Nancy Pelosi as well as Senator Schumer, because nothing's permanent, but it goes to show you that he says, I'm going to get something done with or without you. You'll like it much more if you decide to get in the game.
Well, it's just heartbreaking. The president for so long had said, if I'm elected, you know, I'm going to repeal and replace Obamacare, which the Republicans have said for the last 7 years. Then he's elected. They have the chance. They can't do it because they did not have a plan. So tonight the president's going to sit down with 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats. I got a feeling they're going to come up with a plan.
Well, he won the election. You all remember who he ran against, Hillary Clinton. Her book comes out today. We've been talking about it for a long time. Today it's released. There's a picture of what the cover looks like. It's called What Happened. And Amazon and Walmart have already slashed the price. It's set at $30, but they're selling it for $17.99.
Act before midnight.
Well, here's the thing. I think we all know what happened, but it's fascinating to see what Hillary Clinton thinks would happen, because she keeps looking to, she'll say things like, I know it's ultimately my fault, but, and the but is where it gets interesting.
The but is, who is she talking about when she says but? There's Joe Biden.
Sure. Yeah. She blames Bernie. she blames the Bernie bros. She blames Jill Stein. She blames Barack Obama. She blames Jim Comey. The basket of deplorables comment taken out of context. The private email server, it was dumb. She blames the New York Times. She blames her own campaign, and she blames the, quote, godforsaken Electoral College because, of course, she won the popular vote.
And don't forget Wisconsin. It's the way Wisconsin voter and the ID that cost her 22,000 votes and ultimately the state. So we're going to be talking to the authors of Shattered, one of the authors, Jonathan Allen of Shattered, who took a clinical view of what went wrong and how it went wrong. He tried to write a book about how Hillary Clinton marched to the presidency, being the first female in the history of the country to win that. And it turns out he had a different story in the end.
Well, I was watching an earlier interview with him, and he said, if you like Hillary Clinton, you're probably going to want to buy this book, and you're going to learn what she was going through emotionally when she had to come out and say that she lost a day later, and all the Chardonnay she drank, and that kind of thing. But if you're not a fan of hers, you might want to pick up the book Shattered, because he talks about her shattered election.
Yeah, and of course, she's not going to run again. She's going to leave it to a new generation, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who actually are older.
Meanwhile, all the Democrats just want her to please stop talking.
A lot of them really do. They just want to focus on the party and moving forward.
So, are you going to buy the book? Let us know, friends at foxnews.com. In the meantime, moving forward, time for some news.
All right, let me tell you some headlines. Other headlines this morning. President Trump's controversial immigration order getting a second win from the Supreme Court. Justice Anthony Kennedy temporarily allowing the revised travel restrictions on 6 Muslim-majority nations by delaying a lower court's ruling to end it. The Supreme Court hears full arguments on the travel policy next month. The UN slapping North Korea with brand new sanctions. The Security Council unanimously approving a ban on the rogue regime's textile exports and cutting back on its ability to import oil. The measures aren't as tough as the U.S. wanted after initially calling for banning all oil imports. 16 years after the attacks of September 11th, the traditions to honor the nearly 3,000 victims lives on. The beams of light shooting into the sky over lower Manhattan overnight where the Twin Towers once stood. President Trump observing the anniversary for the first time as commander-in-chief by placing a wreath at the Pentagon with the First Lady. There he is with the wreath.
The terrorists who attacked us thought they could incite fear and weaken our spirit. But America cannot be intimidated.
Vice President Mike Pence went to Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the hijacked Flight 93 crashed into a field. The intended target, Capitol Hill.
I and many others in our nation's capital were able to go home that day to hug our families because of the courage and selflessness of the heroes of Flight 93.
Vice President Pence was serving his first term as U.S. Congressman when those attacks were carried out there at the Pentagon. And those are your headlines.
All right, good job, Ainsley. Let me tell you what's coming up straight ahead. The monster hurricane not stopping dozens of looters, but our next guest is on the case. The police chief from Fort Lauderdale with an awesome message for those looters.
And did you catch this? The stirring speech from Defense Secretary James Mattis on the 16th anniversary of 9/11.
We carry forward our response. We Americans are not made of cotton candy, and Mr. President, your military does not scare.
Even a hurricane could not stop those thieves caught on camera by a local news station from breaking into a Fort Lauderdale shoe store during the storm, apparently. The chief of police warning, quote, going to prison over a pair of sneakers is a fairly bad life choice, as his department arrests so far 19 looters. That police chief, Rick Maglione, joins us right now live from Fort Lauderdale. Chief, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. So we saw those images of apparent looting of a couple of stores down in your neck of the woods. When you saw that, why did you decide to put the message out?
Well, actually, as soon as they declared an evacuation for the eastern half of our city, we put out a message that we were there to help the folks get through this crisis together, as well as a warning to anybody that planned on coming in victimizing our neighbors and business owners that it was not going to be tolerated. They'd be captured and they'd be arrested.
Mm-hmm. And what a lot of people don't realize is during times like these, there are enhanced penalties for people doing wrong, right?
Yes, sir. It's actually an upgraded crime to commit a burglary during a declared state of emergency.
The Miami Police Department tweeted this out. Thinking about looting, ask these guys how that turned out. Hashtag stay indoors is what they suggested in a tweet that we're putting up on the screen right now. Chief, after you put out your statement, what sort of situation did you have last night in regards to any breaking and entering?
Actually, last night, I believe the message came across. Last night we had no incidents whatsoever. So our grand total was 20 before the message was received, apparently.
Okay. And what is your biggest worry? Is it the fact that a lot of people did leave the Fort Lauderdale area and South Florida as well, and their homes are vulnerable, or is it homes and businesses, or is it just everything?
It was everything. We really dodged a big bullet down here, but everybody did the right thing by evacuating if it was possible. We were looking at a Category 5 storm like nothing we've seen in recorded history, barreling right down on South Florida. So anybody who made the decision to leave absolutely made the right decision and shouldn't second-guess themselves. But the police stayed behind, and I think we had a unified message down here that this isn't going to be an opportunity for folks to take advantage of a crisis.
Absolutely. And on Friday, all the models had, for the most part, the storm going right through your neck of the woods, right?
Yes, sir, it did. And that's why we activated certain measures to make sure that we protected our folks' property. And, in fact, this one where the video was taken was one of the times when we had some fairly high winds. We had to respond to this in a Humvee vehicle and a armored SWAT vehicle, just so it was safe for our officers to even go there.
All right. Well, Chief, thank you very much for joining us on this Tuesday morning and tell us about your burglary suppression program that's ongoing now down in your neck of the woods. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So what do you think about his message? Email us, friends@foxnews.com. Meanwhile, one Democrat member of Congress calling Chief of Staff General John Kelly, quote, a disgrace to the uniform. This morning, the general is firing back big time at the congressman.
Here's some quick headlines for you. A U.S. citizen and al-Qaeda member accused of bombing an American military base in Afghanistan heads to court today. Muhammad al-Fariq is charged with preparing the 2009 attack and conspiring to murder Americans. The Texas native has pleaded not guilty and faces life in prison if convicted. And if someone pays me enough money, I will kill the vice president. Those threatening words landing National Guardsman William Dunbar behind bars. Police claim the New Jersey native was on duty when he made the comments on 2 separate occasions. Dunbar is charged with terroristic threats and disorderly conduct. Brian?
All right, thanks, Ainsley. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis praising the spirit and determination of the American people on the marking of 16 years since the 9/11 attacks.
We Americans are not made of cotton candy. We are not seaweed drifting in the current. We are not intimidated by our enemies, and Mr. President, your military does not scare.
Wow, I think that's pretty clear. Retired Marine Corps bomb technician Johnny Joey Jones lost his legs in a bomb blast while deployed in Afghanistan. And I'm just wondering, Joey, what you thought, since you gave so much since 9/11, of Secretary of Defense Mattis's comments.
You know, I've been listening to Secretary Mattis for 10 years now. The one thing that's important that is obvious in every time General Mattis speaks is he's not only speaking to the American people or to the media in the room, he speaks directly to the warfighter. And so as someone who served under him, those words are so important right now. Even if Congress doesn't mean it, our government needs to tell those men and women that are serving they're going to give them the tools they deserve to fight a war worth fighting for. And if they don't mean it, they either need to fix themselves or bring them home.
What is it like knowing that after the 9/11 attacks, you responded? You responded directly for those people, the 2,996 that gave their lives. What's it like for you?
It was common sense. It was the only option I had. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. You know, everyone walks their own path. There's a lot of ways to serve this country. But for me, I couldn't imagine anything else to do with my life after high school. I graduated in 2004, and I was in boot camp by 2005, and I was at war by 2007. I didn't want to go kill anybody. I wasn't in it for that type of adrenaline, but it meant everything in the world to me to serve and be a part of something that would make our country a safer place and hopefully seek vengeance for what happened on 9/11. 9/11.
You know, one other thing that came good out of 9/11, I got to meet, and the country and the world got to meet, a great generation of military leaders. I think of General Petraeus, General Odierno, and people like Marine General, former Commandant John Kelly, who's now Chief of Staff for President Trump after doing a great job of Homeland Security Secretary. He was called out by this congressman, and this Congressman Gutierrez, after the president decided to give DACA 6 months to get their act together for passage or for Congress to act. Gutierrez says this: General Kelly is a hypocrite who is a disgrace to the uniform he used to wear. He has no honor and should be drummed out of the White House. And before I get you to respond, General Kelly responded to Chris Wallace yesterday. He says, as far as the congressmen and other irresponsible members of Congress are concerned, they have the luxury of saying what they want as they do nothing and have almost no responsibility. They can call people liars, but it would be inappropriate for me to say the same thing back at them. As my blessed mother used to say, empty barrels make the most noise. Your reaction to this exchange?
Let me be incredibly clear here. As a Marine who's worn the same uniform as General Kelly, who's lost my legs in combat and fought 2 wars, this congressman doesn't have a leg to stand on when it comes to criticizing or judging the character of General Kelly. Let me be even more clear and say that just because he's done enough backroom deals or convinced enough people in Illinois to vote for him doesn't mean he's peddling in the career of character like General Kelly does. A Marine that dons that uniform, that goes through what General Kelly has done, not only himself, but to pay the ultimate sacrifice, the true ultimate sacrifice, to lose his own son in a war and be in the hospital visiting guys like me just weeks and months later. You can probably tell it makes me physically furious to read and hear those words. And, hopefully there are 434 other congressmen that have more character and better words and understand honor, courage, and commitment than that congressman.
Look, sometimes people lose their temper and they pop off. I hope this is the case for Gutierrez's sake, because this is so inappropriate, I can't begin to talk. Also, when does the Chief of Staff make policy decisions? He's there to organize a White House and work with the president to push his agenda forward, which, by the way, has 6 months for Congress to work it out. He should get the job done, not call out Marine generals.
Well, what General Kelly has done, putting his life, his family's life on the line, he's made this country a safer place and a more free place for every DACA, every person that is living in this country under DACA or maybe at jeopardy at losing it. And that's the nearsightedness of our Congress right now. We don't actually look at the actual effect of something. We look at how it will affect the voters. For anyone to raise their hand in support of a bill or against one, it has to pass 2 tests right now. Will this get me elected? Will this get me reelected? I can assure you, General Kelly has never asked himself that when supporting something or advising against it.
And Joey, this is about service for General Kelly. He was retired. He had earned it. When he was called to service, he responded to the call. That was a mismatch, and hopefully that congressman will straighten it out. Johnny Joey Jones, thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, 30 minutes before the top of the hour. Hillary Clinton's email scandal not over yet. Why there's a new investigation, and millions of people across Florida picking up the pieces from Irma's destruction. Jeff Block is on the road looking at the damage. Jeff, where are you now?
We are on the road to recovery, which is now 275. They tell us that the Sunshine Skyway Bridge is open. We're going to show you whether it is or not. Just a minute.
Alabama is under a state of emergency right now as tropical depression Irma is moving north.
Look at those pictures from Georgia. The deadly storm bringing strong wind and a lot of rain after battering South Carolina, Georgia, and, of course, the state of Florida.
So the question is, where do we find Jeff Block? Well, the answer? Heading down I-75 towards Naples, Florida right now. Jeff, they told you the bridges were open, right?
Wait, is he driving and talking?
Yeah, they did, and so we cut over... we can chew gum, too, if we need to, but we cut over to 275, which, as you know, is the Sunshine Skyway, and I tell you, if we come over this rise, we may see, indeed, whether it's open, and look at, if you see it off in the distance there, I think you see the lights, those characteristic green and yellowish lights up there. It's open, both directions, and this is Florida, going back. down I-75 this morning, we saw a steady stream of traffic that is headed back into the state to try and get back to it. It's a long ride, and it's been a long ride for them. But you look at all this traffic. A lot of traffic on the bridge this morning. So I guess that's good news. What do you think?
All right. So where are you headed ultimately, Jeff?
Naples. I think we'll go all the way down to Naples and just check communities out as we go along the way. I mean, in Tampa, here's your hurricane headline, by the way. That's Tampa Bay Times this morning. They were lucky. Up there, they were lucky. Naples, not so much.
Jeff, so my best friend lives in that area. She said that they were allowed to go back. She lives in right outside of Clearwater in Dunedin, and their house is actually on one of the fingers, the water that it's the main area, and then they've built these fingers where you can they live
on the bridge.
Wow, that's pretty scary.
Put your boat and all that sort of thing.
But they're not allowed to go back into their neighborhood. So they are allowed to come back into the Tampa area, but they're not allowed to go back into their neighborhood.
Yeah, no, that's the case of a lot of like the Barrier Islands, for example. Well, yesterday they opened up where we were, Madeira Beach. Yesterday, they opened that up because there wasn't so much damage. So it's just it's catch as catch can, but it's going to be a while.
Yeah, Jacksonville's probably. It looks like it's got hit the toughest outside the Keys.
Yeah.
And Jeff, this is the closest we'll ever get to hanging out. I mean, this is as close as ride along. Yeah, just a ride along.
Probably just as well. You probably wouldn't want to be in this car. Hey, Bob, show him the back of the car. I don't know if I can see back there. You do not want to be in the back of that car.
What a mess. But you had to sleep there, right?
Parking garage last night, so we did. Yeah. It's a good time. I wish you were here.
Sure,
it would be a fun thing.
But this is Jeff's assignment. When we send him places where there are no hotels open, what does he do? He winds up sleeping in the truck with Bob and then driving and talking. And
well, we appreciate it because folks that are watching, they know that
breakfast.
You're out there giving them the update. What do you have?
What is that? A ring ding?
That's Zingers. Zingers. That's a
Life on the Road.
Well, I'm going to charge Hostess for the commercial there. So
all right, gives you a little jolt. And by the way, you're going to get paid to get stay in a hotel anyway. If you want to pocket the money, you sleep in the car.
That's not the way it works.
Keep the money.
You have to show the receipt.
Brian, that's fraud. Hard to admit on TV.
A guy who's been on the road before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Suddenly, accounting is going to scrutinize those Super Bowl receipts.
I stayed in the Marriott last night, Gavin. That's right.
All right.
Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff Flock, who is traveling down I-75 in Florida right now.
With ho-hos.
All right, with Zingers. Janice Dean joins us right now. Janice, it's no longer a hurricane. It is a big storm, however, and it's going to be a big rainmaker.
Look at the longevity of the storm. I mean, the fact that we had 185 mile per hour sustained winds for 37 hours, that's the longest, strongest hurricane we have ever had in the Atlantic Basin. First landfall in Cuba since 1924. The strongest hurricane that has hit the Leeward Islands ever. And then we had our landfall on Sunday, 2 landfalls in Key West, or in the Keys, and then Marco Island as well. And look at it now. I mean, a week later, it's a remnant low. Incredible lifespan of Irma. Future radar will show you the potential for some showers, thunderstorms. We could see an isolated tornado. We actually saw an isolated tornado this morning in South Carolina. But by Wednesday, we are done with Irma. Could see potential 1 to 2 inches of rainfall, the heaviest of rain in North Carolina, but otherwise not too bad a forecast as we say goodbye to Irma. Now we say hello to Jose. Let's see what happens to Jose. At this point, it's going to make kind of a loop-de-loo, a little strange path here. A lot of folks are concerned whether it's going to hit the east coast of the United States. The tropical models are not really in agreement. So the bottom line is we're going to watch Jose, but I will tell you one of the reliable forecast models, the Euro, which did very well with Irma and has done very well with hurricanes, makes this a curve and doesn't hit anyone. So that's the outcome that we are hoping for Jose. No way, hashtag no way Jose.
Wow. And do you remember spirographs?
It kind of
that reminds me of a spirograph.
When was a spirograph?
It was 60s. Yeah, 60s. I think
wasn't born.
It was either Hasbro or Fisher-Price.
Let's Google that.
All right.
All right, Janice, thank you very much. It was a lot of lines. All right, time for some headlines now.
All right, Hillary Clinton's private email server scandal. It's not over yet. A Maryland judge now ordering the state bar to investigate 3 Clinton lawyers, including former State Department Chief of Staff Cheryl Mills. The order follows claims from a lawyer that the Clinton legal team destroyed evidence by deleting thousands of emails. The Bar Association initially dismissed the accusations, but the judge says they're too strong now to ignore. This is why police officers don't want you on the roads. An SUV nearly flips over when a tree suddenly crashes down onto a highway in Georgia. Dash camera video showing the back of that car flying into the air as the driver slams on the brakes and crashes back down on the road. That driver, thankfully, was not seriously injured.
So he jammed on the brake.
Nearly 24 NFL players disrespecting the national anthem this weekend by kneeling, sitting, or raising a fist. Former NFL coach Mike Ditka had some harsh words for them. Listen.
There's a time and place for everything. Before a football game is not the time and place for it, period. There's always going to be some malcontents. Nobody will remember who they were.
On Sunday, the Cleveland Browns stood locking arms with police officers in the military 2 weeks after a dozen players kneeled for the anthem.
I love that.
No players protested last night on the anniversary of 9/11. Thank goodness. Tim Tebow stepping in to help those affected by Hurricane Irma. Of course, he's so nice, including one of our nation's heroes. Tebow visiting a World War II veteran in a Florida special needs shelter and getting a special performance. Tim Tebow says he was totally uplifted by visiting that individual who's playing the harmonica. Those are your headlines.
Had a harmonica and a dog.
Right.
Sweet. Twofer. All right. Straight ahead on this Tuesday, President Trump's travel ban getting a second shot from the U.S. Supreme Court. So is it here to last? Judge Napolitano is here to chat about that next.
All right, 16 minutes before the top of the hour. President Trump's controversial refugee travel ban getting a second shot from the Supreme Court.
Justice Anthony Kennedy temporarily restoring the revised travel restrictions on those 6 Muslim-majority nations by delaying a lower court's ruling to end it.
We need some explanation. So here's Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. So it was on, it was off. It was on, now it is.
The modified version of the president's second order, the one that the Supreme Court itself modified, is still in effect. And that one says if you have a, quote, this is the issue, significant relationship, close quote, in the United States, you get to come here even if you're from one of the 6 countries that the president designated. I've been arguing for months. The first order that the president signed on January 27th and the second order that he signed in March are absolutely constitutional and lawful because the Constitution gives this authority to the president, and the Congress has expressly said in a statute the president can stop immigration from designated countries for a finite period of time for national security purposes. The courts tried to reread this and the courts tried to change it. It made its way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the travel ban stands unless you have a significant relationship.
And that's the problem right there.
That's the problem. Justices.
What's significant?
Right. Justices Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, and Neil Gorsuch dissented, saying, what is a significant relationship? You're going to have litigation all over the place as to what it means. And they were correct. And their dissent also said, most respectfully, 6 colleagues, who the heck are you to rewrite a presidential executive order? This is the president's authority, not ours. So when it went back to Hawaii to define significant relationship, the Hawaii judge expanded it. The Ninth Circuit, when it was appealed by the Justice Department, expanded it again. That was appealed to the Supreme Court yesterday. Justice Kennedy said everything's on hold until we can get all the briefs in. They're due at noon today. You'll get an informal vote by the Supreme Court tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Now, they're hearing the case. Oral argument on the whole issue. The power of the president to ban immigrants for whatever reason the first week in October.
But, Judge, here's the thing, and you brought it to this. You said right away this is constitutional, but then these judges came back outside the Supreme Court and said, no, I watched him campaign. I know what he really means by that. I don't like his anti-Muslim fervor, so that's what he's getting to. Therefore, I'm going to get rid of this.
Brian, you're so smart. I have never seen this before, where the words of a candidate candidate are used against that same person when he's now in office. You often say incendiary things when you're running for office in the heat of the moment to gin up the crowd, to resist your opponent for whatever reason. But you're right. I know you read all these cases, Brian. You are correct.
I'm very lonely.
These lower
But he
court
said you're smart.
judges and these litigants who are state attorneys general in Hawaii and the state of Washington found everything that Donald Trump, the candidate, said that was incendiary about immigrants from the Middle East and threw it in the mix and said, therefore he's against Muslims, therefore he hates Islam, therefore this is a Muslim ban, therefore it's unconstitutional. The Supreme Court said, we're not going to go there.
All right. And just real quick, why are the 9/11 hijackers not tried and convicted already? What's going on?
I wish you and I talked about this 16 years ago.
He admitted guilt. Sheikh Mohammed said, I'm guilty, kill me.
I wish that he had been tried in federal court here in New York. The